The call came at 12:17 a.m. Henry Calloway was awake, of course. He hadn't slept through the night in 3 years. Sleep, for men like him, came in brief, haunted segments, 30 minutes here, an hour there, until the mind gave up and simply stayed alert. The screen of his phone lit the dim corner of his study, where he sat with a glass of untouched bourbon. Unknown caller. He never answered those. But something cold and ancient inside him tightened. He stared at the screen longer than he meant to. The ringtone hummed once more, soft and clean, breaking the stillness like a drop in water. He swiped. Hello? A pause. A faint sound of wind. Then, "Is this Mr. Calloway?" The voice was small, young, female. Her accent, Southern, maybe Savannah-born, but unpolished, honest, shaky. "Yes. This is Henry Calloway." "Who is this?" Another breath. Then she said the words that would end one life and begin another. "I think your son's lying on the street." Henry stood before he even knew he had moved. "Where?" His voice cut hard now. "What street?" "He's by the fountain at Forsyth Park." He's not talking. He was breathing. But now he's really still. The word echoed inside him, stabbing through layers of noise and power and image management. The bourbon glass hit the edge of the desk and shattered. "I'm on my way," he said, already grabbing his coat, phone still pressed to his ear. "What's your name?" Silence. Then, softer than the wind, "Maya." He took the stairs 2 at a time, crossing marble floors that glowed under chandelier light. The kind of house that made people whisper when they passed it on the tour trolleys. The Calloway mansion home of Savannah's golden boy. Built a startup from nothing, worth over $400 million, bought half the historic district in a single year. None of it mattered now. Not the house, not the title, not the money. Not if Caleb stopped thinking. The driver wasn't waiting. He didn't call for staff. Henry just got in the Tesla and peeled out of the driveway. Tires whispering across stone. The city passed in a blur of gaslight lanterns and old brick, and the only sound in his ears was Maya's voice. He was talking a little, said he was cold. I gave him my sweater. It's red, in case you see him. The sleeves are too long. The way she said it, quiet, uncertain, stirred something he hadn't let himself feel in years. By the time he turned onto Gaston Street, the flashing ambulance lights had already begun to paint the oaks with color. He pulled onto the curb and ran, and he hadn't run in a decade. A small crowd lingered near the wrought iron fence that framed the fountain. Paramedics crouched over a figure lying curled near the steps. Street lights spilled across the concrete in soft halos. "Caleb," Henry called, breath ragged. One medic looked up. "Sir, that's my son." He fell to his knees beside the stretcher. Caleb's curls were messy, his lips pale, shirt wrinkled. His eyes fluttered but didn't open. Henry reached for his hand. Cold, too cold. "He'll be okay," one of the EMTs said. "Vitals are steady. He may have passed out from dehydration, possibly exhaustion. Nothing indicates trauma. But we're getting him to Memorial for tests." Henry nodded, jaw clenched. Behind him, someone coughed. He turned. A little girl no taller than his son's shoulder stood shivering in a red sweater that hung off her like a curtain. Her jeans were muddy at the hems, sneakers too thin for the temperature. "Maya." Their eyes met. "You stayed?" he asked. She nodded. "You stayed the whole time?" "I didn't want him to be alone." The words, simple, untrained, spoken with a kind of aching clarity, hit him like a bell. He stood, pulled off his coat, and draped it over her shoulders. "You're freezing." "It's okay," she said. He needed the sweater more. Henry knelt to her level. "How old are you?" 6.5. "And you called me?" "Yes, sir." I found his phone on the bench beside him. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. "Your name was Dad in his favorites." She said the word like it didn't belong to her, like it was someone else's luxury. He swallowed the sting in his throat. Do you live nearby? On Jones Street. With my grandma. She's sick a lot. A medic called from the ambulance. Sir, we're rolling out. Henry turned, then back to Maya. Come with me. She blinked. Where? To the hospital. I'll call your grandma when we get there. She hesitated. Please, he said. Her eyes searched his face for something. He didn't know what, but whatever she saw, it was enough. She nodded once. The ride was silent except for the soft beep of monitors and the wheels on tile when they arrived. Caleb was wheeled into a private room. Henry stayed behind, hand still holding Maya's. You don't have to be here, he said gently. I know, she whispered, but I promised him I'd stay until someone came. He looked down at her. You did more than stay, Maya. You showed up. She blinked at him. Her voice shook. Does that mean I did good? He crouched again, ignoring the ache in his knees. You did something not everyone would. You saw someone hurting, and you didn't walk away. I just didn't want him to be alone, she said again, softer this time. Henry stood, looked toward the room where his son now rested. Machines blinking softly in rhythm with a second chance. I didn't want him to be alone either, he murmured. Then, turning to her, let's go find your grandma. Maya smiled, small and crooked. And in that moment, under the harsh glow of hospital lights, with the quiet hum of breath and machines around them, Henry Calloway felt something he hadn't let himself feel in years. Gratitude, not for money, not for power, but for a red sweater, a cracked phone, and the voice of a little girl who simply chose not to look away. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The hospital waiting room smelled like lemon disinfectant and something else, something clinical, clean, and hollow. Henry had always hated hospitals, not because of what they were, but because of what they weren't. They weren't places for control, for plans, for certainty. They were waiting stations for fate. He sat in a plastic chair that creaked every time he shifted, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped, staring down at the beige floor tiles like they might arrange themselves into an answer. Across from him, Maya sat cross-legged on the chair, his coat still wrapped around her like a blanket. Her small fingers fidgeted with the frayed edge of her sleeve, tugging a loose thread with careful attention. Henry checked his phone for the third time in 2 minutes. Nothing from the nurse yet. He cleared his throat. Would you like something to eat? They've got vending machines. I think one even has warm sandwiches. Maya shook her head. Hot chocolate? He offered, trying again. Her eyes lifted, soft brown and ringed with sleeplessness. Do they have the kind with the little marshmallows? A corner of his mouth lifted. If not, I'll find some and bring them back. She gave a tiny nod, like it cost her something just to admit the want. He stood, hesitated. You'll be okay here for a minute? I'm not going anywhere, she said quietly. And she meant it. Henry walked down the hall, mind spinning. The vending machine was a distraction. What he really needed was a moment to breathe without feeling like the weight of the world had climbed onto his chest. His son had been lying on the sidewalk at midnight. His son, who barely spoke at dinner anymore, who'd stopped looking him in the eye sometime around sophomore year. He hadn't asked where Caleb had been or why. Not yet. There'd be time for that, assuming Caleb would even answer. The machine whirred and dropped the cocoa cup into place. He reached for it, fingers brushing warm cardboard, and paused. His own reflection stared back at him in the vending machine glass. Tousled hair, wrinkled shirt, eyes with more shadows than sleep. He barely recognized the man in front of him. When he returned, Maya was still in the same spot, still holding the coat like it was armor. I found the marshmallow kind, he said, crouching beside her. It's not great, but it's sweet. She took it with both hands, like she wasn't sure it was really for her. Thank you. Her voice was so quiet it was nearly a thought. Of course, he said. Then, is your grandmother expecting you? Maya nodded. I told her I was just going to the corner store. She gets worried easy. He exhaled, looked down the hallway toward the nurse's station. No updates yet. I'd like to take you home, he said. If that's okay. Maya's brow furrowed. To your house? No. I mean back to your grandmother's place. I'll explain everything to her. Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. She doesn't like visitors. Says we don't have company furniture, but I think she'll be okay with you. That tugged something in his chest. He stood and offered her his hand. She stared at it for a moment, then reached up and took it, Coco still in her other hand. They rode in silence. The Tesla hummed softly as they passed beneath Spanish moss hanging heavy from the oaks. The streets of West Savannah grew narrower, quieter, houses leaning toward each other with age and memory. She pointed when they reached a faded blue duplex. The porch light flickered like it was remembering how to stay lit. She'll be asleep, Maya said. She always sleeps in the recliner. Henry followed her up the steps. Maya opened the screen door with care, like she was afraid the house might notice the noise. Inside, it smelled of menthol, dust, and lavender. A TV murmured softly in the corner, the screen showing a black and white gospel concert on low volume. And there, in the recliner, was Celeste. Her skin was the soft leather brown of a well-loved hymn book, her silver hair wrapped in a scarf. She wore a fleece blanket like a cape. Even in sleep, her mouth was slightly parted like she'd just been about to sing. Maya walked to her, touched her shoulder gently. "Grandma," she whispered. "I'm home." Celeste stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and when she saw Maya, a smile bloomed slow and wide. "Baby girl," she murmured. "You back from the store?" "I brought someone," Maya said. "He's Caleb's dad." Henry stepped forward, suddenly aware of his presence, of how foreign he must look here, like a man who belonged to another world entirely. Celeste's eyes sharpened. "The one from the phone call?" "Yes, ma'am." Her gaze traveled over him like she was flipping through a book and hadn't yet decided if the story was worth finishing. "You come to return something, or take something else?" Henry blinked, caught off guard. "I came to thank her," he said. "Your granddaughter stayed with my son when he needed someone. She didn't have to, but she did." Celeste's expression softened. "That sounds like her. I also wanted to make sure she got home safe," he added. Maya curled up beside her grandmother, still holding the half-finished cocoa. "She gave him her sweater," Henry said quietly, "and she called me with his phone. She probably saved him." Celeste's eyes glistened just a little. "She's got her mama's heart," she whispered. "Always did." Henry looked around the room. It was small but clean. A bookshelf held a few worn Bibles, some church programs stacked neatly, and a faded photo of a younger woman who looked like Maya, framed in a pink plastic rectangle. "You live here alone?" he asked gently. Celeste nodded. "Ain't had much family left since my daughter passed." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We make do." Henry hesitated, then said, "If there's anything you need repairs, groceries, anything at all, I'd be glad to help." Celeste looked at him like she'd heard that line before, too many times, and never seen it lead to much. But then Maya reached out and touched her grandmother's hand. "He stayed," she said softly. "He didn't have to, but he stayed." That, more than anything, seemed to settle something in Celeste's eyes. "You want to help?" she asked, looking straight at him. "Come back tomorrow. Just to talk. Ain't nobody been interested in that for a while." Henry nodded. "I will." He turned to Maya, crouching one more time. "Thank you again, Maya." She looked at him, her eyes deep wells of something he couldn't name. "You're welcome," she said. "Tell Caleb I hope he feels better." Henry stood on the porch a long moment after the door closed behind him. The night air cool against his skin. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man trying to outrun his guilt. He felt like a man trying to earn something real. And for the first time, he thought maybe he still could. The morning sun hit the hospital windows like a quiet apology. Warm, soft, late. Henry sat beside Caleb's bed, his fingers wrapped around a styrofoam cup of coffee he'd been holding for too long. It had gone cold. Caleb's eyes were closed, chest rising steadily now, cheeks no longer the color of ash. There were monitors, but no alarms. Machines, but no rush. Just breath. Just time. Henry leaned back and watched his son sleep. There were 1,000 things he wanted to say, and not a single one had learned how to climb out of his throat. How had it come to this? A phone call, a child's voice, a cracked sidewalk. He didn't even know what had happened. Caleb hadn't said a word since waking up hours ago, just nodded slightly when the nurse asked questions, answered in half syllables. But when Henry asked anything, nothing. There had been a time when Caleb used to follow him around the kitchen, asking about stock prices and coding languages and why grown-ups talked to their phones like they were people. Now the boy barely looked at him. He ran a hand over his face. The skin beneath his eyes felt heavier than the bone. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Nurse Valerie stepped in. Her voice was always gentle, but it had authority behind it, the kind that made people listen the first time. "Mr. Calloway," she said. "Good to see you're still with us." "Yeah," Henry said, rising to greet her. "Didn't feel right leaving." She glanced at Caleb, then smiled kindly. "He's stable. You've got yourself a strong one. I don't feel like I deserve him," Henry murmured before he could stop himself. Valerie looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "Most good parents feel that way, even the ones who are trying their best." He nodded. "Has he said anything? To anyone?" Valerie hesitated. "He asked for his tablet this morning. That's about it. But he's young. Give him time." Henry looked at his son again, at the sharp curve of his jaw, the faint freckles that hadn't quite disappeared. "I feel like I missed everything," he whispered. Valerie's voice softened. "Missing something doesn't mean it's lost. You just have to decide if you want to catch up." He looked at her, then really looked. Her badge read, Valerie Harper, RN. Her eyes were tired but kind. Hair pulled into a clean twist. There was a presence about her, one that filled the room without noise. "You have kids?" he asked. "2, she said, pulling up Caleb's chart. "Grown. One in Atlanta. One in Charlotte. Both think I'm overprotective and underpaid." A dry chuckle escaped his lips. "That sounds about right." She looked at him, one brow raised. "You're not used to sitting still, are you?" He shook his head. "Not unless it's scheduled." "Well," she said, tucking the clipboard under her arm. "Life doesn't run on calendars. And sometimes, the quiet moments are the ones that teach us who we are." She turned to go, then paused. "If he's not talking, don't press. Just be there. Be still with him." Henry nodded, but the words stuck in his chest. Be still. He didn't know how. He never had. Outside, the sky was a soft gray blue, and the parking lot glinted with leftover dew. He needed air. Just a moment. He left Caleb sleeping and made his way down the corridor, past reception, through the glass doors. The wind greeted him like an old song. And there, beneath a tree near the sidewalk, was Maya. She sat on a bench with a peanut butter sandwich in her hands and her legs swinging just above the ground. His coat was folded beside her. He crossed the street. "You're back," he said. She nodded, mouth full, but I wanted to know if Caleb was okay. Henry sat beside her. "He's doing better. Tired. Quiet." "He's always quiet," she said. "But not like last night." Henry glanced at her. "You two know each other?" "Not really," she said. "We've seen each other at the park. He watches birds sometimes, or writes in a little notebook. I just thought he looked lonely." That word again. It echoed every time someone said it. Henry swallowed hard. "He is." Maya took another bite, then wiped her mouth with her sleeve. I didn't know if you'd come back, she said. What made you think I wouldn't? People don't always mean what they say. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just fact. He looked at her. This little girl who spoke like she'd lived 3 lives already. I meant it, he said. I'm here. She nodded, slowly. Then, Grandma made sweet tea this morning. She said you looked like you needed some. Henry smiled. She might be right. She also said to invite you, but only if you don't mind mismatched chairs and a little bit of gospel music. He laughed under his breath. I think I can manage. Maya stood, brushing crumbs from her jeans. You coming now? He hesitated, looked back at the hospital. Just for a minute, he said. They walked down the street together, her pace quick, his slower. At one point, she reached out and took his hand without asking. It was so natural, so gentle, he didn't even realize it had happened until they reached the corner. When they turned down Jones Street, he saw the porch again, the chipped paint, the plant in the cracked pot, the curtains that had seen decades. And yet, it felt more inviting than his entire estate. Celeste was waiting on the porch. Well, she said, standing with her hands on her hips. You came back. I told Maya I would. Celeste nodded once. Then come sit. Tea's still warm, and I don't serve second chances cold. They sat under the fading light, tea in hand, the air thick with jasmine and stories that had yet to be told. And as the sun dipped lower into the Savannah skyline, Henry Calloway didn't feel like a man lost in guilt anymore. He felt like a man being invited back into something sacred, a life he didn't know he needed, a family he hadn't known he was missing. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Henry didn't expect the music. The moment he stepped through Celeste's front door, he was greeted not by silence, but by a record playing low from the corner of the living room. The song was old dusty soul gospel, full of longing and lift. A woman's voice trembled through the static, not quite perfect, but piercing in its purity. Celeste hummed softly to it as she poured sweet tea into mismatched glasses. The smell of lemon and sugar drifted through the room. Her motions were slow but assured, like she'd done this same ritual for decades. Never trust a house too quiet, she said, placing the glasses on the table. Means someone's hiding something. Henry smiled as he stepped further in, his eyes scanning the walls. Family pictures, faded sunflowers painted on canvas, a cross stitched from yarn. Everything worn, but nothing unloved. Maya sat cross-legged on the rug with crayons scattered around her. She looked up and beamed. I'm drawing our fountain, she said. The one where I found Caleb. He nodded, crouching beside her. That's a good place to remember. I put your coat in it, she added. See? It's folded by the bench. And there it was, a red rectangle beside a cartoon fountain, with a small stick figure standing nearby. Henry blinked. That's me. I gave you eyebrows. Yours are always doing something. He laughed, startled at how honest and funny that was. From the kitchen, Celeste called, You stayin' for supper? Or just came to sip and run? Henry stood. I don't want to impose. You already did, she said. Might as well eat too. He followed the scent of cornbread and onions into the kitchen, where Celeste handed him a dish towel and pointed to the steaming pot on the stove. You can stir, she said, settling slowly into a nearby chair. And talk while you do it. That's the price. He took the spoon and stirred. The stew was thick, full of okra and something smoky underneath. Caleb's doing better, he said after a moment. She nodded, listening. But he's far from me. Always has been lately. Like there's a wall I built and forgot how to take down. Celeste raised a brow. Didn't forget. Just didn't try. He paused, then kept stirring. I worked. I built things. Provided. And left the hard part for someone else. The words hit clean and true. My wife. He started, then hesitated. She passed 6 years ago. Cancer, quick. And then it was just me and Caleb, and I kept telling myself we were doing fine. But he grew quieter, and I just didn't know how to reach him without breaking something. Celeste leaned forward, eyes soft. You know what happens to quiet children, Mr. Calloway. They don't always stay quiet. Sometimes they scream, but not with words. With actions, with disappearances. He nodded, jaw tight. You're trying now, she said. And I see that. But don't wait for the system to ask you questions you should have already answered. He looked up, startled. System? She exhaled, slow and knowing. Maya being out at midnight, alone. Someone will notice. CPS gets wind of it. They'll come poking around. They don't always care about context. They care about checkboxes. Henry felt his stomach dip. Wouldn't they just leave her with you? I'm not her legal guardian, she said. Wasn't able to file when my daughter passed. Medical bills wiped us out, and with my heart. It's complicated. He set the spoon down. So, what happens if they take notice? Celeste looked at him, direct and calm. They could take her. The words sat heavy between them. I won't let that happen, Henry said. You might not have a say. I'll make sure she's protected. Celeste tilted her head. You don't know her favorite song, or what side of the bed she sleeps on. But you're ready to fight for her? Henry swallowed hard. She stayed with my son, alone, in the dark. She didn't run. She didn't panic. She sat beside him and waited. That kind of heart. I've seen grown men with less. Celeste's face didn't soften, but her eyes shifted. She's never had someone fight for her. Not really. Then maybe it's time she did. From the doorway, a voice cut through the air. You think you can just show up and fix everything? Henry turned. Caleb. His voice was raspy from sleep, and he leaned slightly against the frame, pale, thin, but alert. Henry moved toward him, cautious. I didn't know you were awake. Caleb looked at him, eyes unreadable. You didn't ask. The silence that followed was loud. I didn't mean for this to happen, Henry said. I should have known where you were. You should have cared, Caleb replied. His voice didn't rise. If anything, it dropped lower. I waited up 3 birthdays in a row, Dad. I stopped expecting anything by the 4th. Henry flinched. Maya, wide-eyed, stood quietly from the floor and slipped behind Celeste. I don't want to be a project, Caleb continued. Not something you fix because it looks bad. Henry's voice cracked. You're not, I swear to you. Then don't talk. Show me. Caleb turned and walked back out, slow and steady. Henry stood frozen, one hand at his side, the other clenched. Celeste broke the silence with a whisper. Now you see it. The cost of absence. Henry closed his eyes. I didn't want to lose him. Then don't, she said. But you'll have to choose. Either stay with your image, or stay with your son. Outside, the last of the light faded into evening. Inside, the house grew quiet, not from emptiness, but from the weight of hearts learning how to speak again. And Henry, for the first time in years, didn't reach for the exit. He stayed. Henry sat on the edge of the guest chair in Celeste's kitchen, staring down at a chipped porcelain plate with half a biscuit untouched. The stew had gone cold. The gospel record had long since ended, but he hadn't noticed until the silence crept in like fog. Maya had retreated to her room, claiming she wanted to finish her drawing, but Henry could feel the shift in the air since Caleb's outburst. Celeste moved slowly around the kitchen, her joints soft with age, her presence the only thing keeping the room from feeling completely broken. He ran a hand over his face. I wanted to say the right thing. You said the honest thing, Celeste replied without turning. It's not always the same. He nodded, then looked toward the hallway where Caleb had disappeared. Do you think he'll forgive me? She wiped her hands on a towel and finally turned, leaning both palms on the counter. Forgiveness isn't something you ask for once and receive like a gift. It's something you earn. Slow. One quiet moment at a time. Henry's jaw tightened. And if I'm already too late? You're not, she said. But you are on borrowed time. There was a knock at the front door. Celeste gave him a look. Don't worry. I'm not expecting spirits. He stood and went to answer. A woman stood on the porch. Tall, early 40s. Curly dark hair pulled into a low bun. Blazer slightly wrinkled from the heat. A clipboard in hand. Mr. Calloway? He straightened. Yes? She offered a polite smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm Miss Landry. I'm with Child Protective Services. I'm here regarding Maya Green. His stomach dropped. Is she all right? He asked, already glancing back into the house. She's not in immediate danger. No, Landry said calmly. But we've received a report, and I need to speak with her and her guardian. Henry opened the door further and motioned inside. Come in. Landry stepped over the threshold like she was taking mental notes of every creak and scuff. Celeste appeared from the kitchen, spine a little straighter now. You must be Celeste Green, Landry said. Maya's grandmother? Celeste nodded. That's right. I understand Maya was found alone at night last weekend, with a minor who had collapsed. Is that correct? Celeste gave a careful nod. She helped someone, that's all. She helped my son, Henry interjected. Called me, stayed with him until help came. Landry raised an eyebrow. Admirable, but also dangerous. 6-year-olds shouldn't be out unsupervised after dark. Henry opened his mouth, but Celeste gently placed a hand on his arm. Come sit, Miss Landry, she said. No reason to hover in the doorway. They moved to the kitchen table. Maya, hearing unfamiliar voices, peeked from the hallway. When she saw Landry, her body stilled. Celeste looked over. It's all right, baby. Just come sit. Maya hesitated, then padded over slowly, bare feet, quiet on the floor. Landry softened her voice. Hi, Maya. Do you remember me? I met you last year at school. You made me a drawing of a cat in glasses. Maya nodded faintly. I just wanted to check in, make sure you're okay. Can I ask you a few questions? Maya looked to Celeste first. Celeste nodded. It's okay, baby. Just tell the truth. Landry smiled. Can you tell me what happened that night at the park? Maya twisted her fingers in the hem of her dress. I saw Caleb sitting on the bench. Then he fell. I thought he was sick. I tried to wake him up, but he was breathing funny. So I found his phone and called his dad. I stayed because I didn't want him to be alone. Landry took notes, then glanced at Celeste. Did you know she left the house? No, Celeste admitted. But she's not the sneaky type. I was asleep. If I'd known, I'd have stopped her. Henry spoke then, his voice firm but calm. She saved my son. Without her, we might have been planning a funeral. Landry gave him a careful look. I understand your gratitude, Mr. Calloway, but this isn't about heroics. It's about safety. Children are vulnerable. Celeste leaned in. So is poverty. So is illness. So is being old and trying to raise someone all over again, with a heart that doesn't beat like it used to. I didn't choose this story, but I'm doing my best to finish it right. Landry didn't respond for a long moment. Then she closed her folder slowly. We'll need to do a follow-up visit. I'll schedule a home evaluation. For now, Maya can stay. Henry felt the knot in his chest loosen. But Landry wasn't done. We'll also need documentation, guardianship papers, income statements, health records. Celeste's eyes dimmed. I don't have all that. Henry stepped forward. Can I help with any of this? File papers, pay for legal support. Landry gave a cautious nod. If you want to help, Mr. Calloway, I suggest hiring a child advocacy attorney. Maya may need one soon. He nodded. I'll make a call tonight." With that, Landry stood, offered a final glance at Maya, and let herself out. As the door clicked shut, silence reclaimed the house. Henry looked at Celeste. "We can't wait for the system to decide what to do. We need to move fast." "I know," she said, weariness catching in her voice. Maya, now standing beside her grandmother, looked up at Henry. "Are they gonna take me away?" His heart cracked at the sound of it. "No," he said, "not if I can help it. But you're not family." He knelt down. "You don't need blood to belong to someone. Sometimes, the heart decides." She tilted her head. "Do hearts get to choose?" He smiled, even through the ache. "They're the only ones who ever really do." Celeste reached for the teapot, then paused, her hand trembling. Henry stepped forward. "Let me." She allowed it, with something like relief and something like permission. The tea poured slowly, quietly. Outside, the wind picked up, not loud, but steady. Inside, they had chosen to stay, to fight, and to build something the system might try to separate but couldn't unmake. Henry hadn't been inside a courthouse in years, not since the acquisition of the Charleston property. Not since the day he sat across a polished oak table and convinced a room full of legacy investors that dreams cost money and he had more than enough to sell them. But this was different. This wasn't about contracts or balance sheets. This was about a little girl who drew pictures with two big eyes, and the kind of heart that stayed with a stranger until help came. This was about Maya. Henry adjusted the knot of his tie in the reflection of the courthouse's glass doors. He looked sharp, but he felt like his skin didn't quite fit. Next to him, Celeste sat on a weathered bench, her hands resting on a worn leather purse that had seen better days. She wore her Sunday dress, navy blue with white buttons and a church hat that tilted slightly to one side. The edges of her scarf framed her face like lace. "You sure about this?" she asked without looking at him. "No," Henry answered honestly. "But I'm here." She gave him a small nod. Sometimes that's all a child needs. From inside the building, a man approached, tall and serious, wearing a gray suit with a simple silver pin on the lapel. He looked like someone who didn't smile unless it was absolutely necessary. "Mr. Calloway?" Henry stood. "That's me. I'm Elijah Trent, family attorney. I specialize in emergency guardianship filings. The firm said you needed someone discreet and fast." "I need someone good," Henry said. "You got both." They shook hands. Celeste rose slowly and gave a polite nod. Trent turned to her. "You must be Miss Green. It's an honor." Celeste lifted an eyebrow. "Let's see how honored you feel after we spend a few hours talking about paperwork and broken systems." Trent smiled faintly. "Fair enough." They made their way into the building, through metal detectors and down long marble halls. The scent of old paper, lemon cleaner, and stress filled the air. Outside courtroom 2C, Henry sat with Maya beside him, her hand in his. She stared at the laminated sign on the door. "What's a hearing?" she asked. "It's where people talk about what's best for you," he said softly. "Are they gonna ask me to leave Grandma?" Henry didn't answer right away. "We're going to do everything we can so that doesn't happen." Maya looked down. "Last time they talked about me, they didn't let me stay." He turned to her. "That won't happen again." She nodded, but her eyes stayed distant. A woman approached, dark curls pulled into a tight bun, clipboard in hand. It was Miss Landry again. Henry stood. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I was assigned to observe," she said, "to provide input on Maya's welfare." "It's standard." Celeste folded her arms. "Standard for who? The kids or the case files?" Landry offered a tight smile. "We're on the same side." "No," Celeste replied. "We're not. I'm on her side. You're on the policies." Before Landry could respond, the courtroom doors opened. A clerk called their names. Henry took Maya's hand and led her inside. The courtroom wasn't large, but it felt cavernous. The bench at the front was raised high. The judge seated behind it in thick black robes, glasses perched low on her nose. She looked over them with the calm of someone who'd seen too many people pretending to care and could spot the ones who meant it. Mr. Calloway, Miss Green, and Miss Maya Green, she read from the file. Emergency review regarding temporary guardianship and home safety status. Let's begin. Trent stood and presented the motion, clear and efficient. He explained Celeste's health condition, the night Maya found Caleb, and Henry's involvement since. Then, Landry took the stand. Her words were clinical, measured. Maya is a bright child, insightful. But she's been in a vulnerable position for some time. While Miss Green provides love and consistency, her declining health is a risk factor. We must consider long-term stability. The judge nodded slowly. And Mr. Calloway? Henry stood, nerves tight under his skin. I didn't know Maya until the night she helped my son, he began. But I know what she did. I know the kind of courage it takes for a child to stay with someone who's in danger when she could have run. That's not common. That's something exceptional. He paused, voice steadying. I failed my own son in many ways. I see that now. But this girl, she reminded me what it means to show up. To really show up. Not with money. Not with power. With presence. The judge looked at Maya. Would you like to say something, sweetheart? Maya nodded and stood, small but unshaking. I don't want to go nowhere, she said. I like where I am. I know the streetlights outside my window. I know which step on the porch creaks. And I like having Caleb's dad come over. He doesn't talk too much, but he listens. Real listening. There was a long silence. Then the judge cleared her throat. I will not remove Maya from Miss Green's custody at this time, she said firmly. But I will grant temporary co-guardianship with Mr. Calloway under supervision, pending a full review. Celeste exhaled. Henry blinked. Maya grinned. Next hearing in 90 days. The judge continued. In the meantime, keep this child safe. She's been doing the work of grown folks long enough. As they left the courtroom, Henry felt Maya's hand tighten around his. We didn't lose, she whispered. No, he said. We started. Behind them. Landry caught up. Mr. Calloway? He turned. I hope you understand, she said. This isn't over. He nodded. Good. Then I've got time to prove I mean it. And with that, they stepped into the sunlight together, not as a broken man and a borrowed child, but something closer to a family learning how to stand. The days that followed the court hearing felt like an exhale. Henry didn't know he'd been holding, but it wasn't peace, not yet. It was the kind of quiet that comes right before the real work begins. He found himself at Celeste's house almost every day, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes helping fix the squeaky cabinet under the sink, sometimes just showing up with a thermos of coffee and 2 hours to sit in the same room and learn how silence could say everything. Caleb hadn't come around yet, not fully. But there were small things, returning text messages, not disappearing for hours, sharing glances that didn't hold resentment, but something more like uncertainty. Henry could work with uncertainty. It was honest. One Thursday morning, Henry showed up with a folder of documents, a binder labeled Guardianship Prep, and a bag of lemon muffins from Magnolia Bakery. Celeste raised an eyebrow the moment he stepped into the kitchen. You bringing baked goods again, or trying to buy your way into sainthood? Maybe both, he said, setting the bag on the counter. But I figured muffins are safer than miracles. She smirked. Barely. Maya sat at the table, legs swinging beneath the chair, notebook open in front of her, crayons scattered around like fallen leaves. She was drawing a school bus with wings. Henry leaned over. Magic school bus? No, she said. It's just a regular bus. I'm pretending it doesn't get stuck in traffic. He smiled, then turned to Celeste. I got a message from Miss Landry this morning. They've scheduled the first home visit for next week. Celeste didn't flinch. Let them come. Nothing in this house is pretending to be perfect. They're going to look at everything. The setup, the sleeping arrangements, the safety precautions. Well, I hope they like gospel records and my plastic Jesus on the shelf, because that's what they're getting. Henry chuckled, but then his expression grew more serious. I've also enrolled Maya in a school downtown. Charter, strong arts program, small class sizes. She'd still be able to stay here, but I'd take her in the mornings. Celeste set down her tea. You did that without asking me? No, he said. I'm asking you now. She studied him. You're a businessman. You don't ask unless you already signed the papers. I just want to give her more, he said softly. Options. A space to grow. She has space, Celeste said. What she needs is consistency. I can be that. Can you? Celeste asked, voice low. Because consistency doesn't come in a binder or a private school application. It comes at 3 a.m., when she wakes up scared and doesn't know why. It comes when she fails a test and thinks it means she's dumb. It comes when she's not cute or clever, just messy and human. Henry sat down. Then teach me. Let me learn. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, finally, she nodded. That might help. Later that afternoon, while Maya napped and Celeste rested in her chair, Henry stepped outside to take a call. The sky was overcast, and the air smelled like summer rain that hadn't yet made up its mind. The voice on the line was brisk, efficient. Female. Mr. Calloway? This is Elise Parr from the Southern Ledger. I'm following up on a recent court hearing involving a minor named Maya Green. Henry stiffened. I'm not interested in speaking on the matter. I understand, she said. But the story's circulating. A former tech executive stepping into a guardianship case in a low-income neighborhood. People are talking. I don't care what people are talking about. But the internet does, and your board members are watching. Henry closed his eyes. What exactly are you threatening? I'm not, Elise replied. I'm offering you a chance to shape the narrative. We can paint this as a story of redemption, of personal growth. Man returns to his roots and finds purpose beyond the dollar. It's not a story, he said coldly. It's a little girl's life. I respect that, but others won't. Better you write the headline than let someone else do it for you. He ended the call. The silence that followed felt sharper than the conversation itself. When he turned, Caleb was standing at the edge of the porch, arms folded. Was that about Maya? Henry nodded slowly. Some reporter sniffing around. Caleb looked away. They'll make it about you. I won't let them. But they will. Henry sat on the steps. You think I don't know how the game works? I built it. But this, I'm not playing anymore. Caleb stayed quiet. Then, after a long pause, she likes you, you know. Maya. Even when you talk too much. Henry looked over. I like her too. She's something else. Yeah, Caleb said. She is. It was the first time Caleb had spoken to him without anger in weeks. Henry didn't move, afraid the moment might disappear. She wrote a poem, Caleb added. Yesterday, said it was about you. Henry blinked. Me? Caleb nodded. Want me to get it? Henry hesitated, then nodded. Please. Caleb disappeared inside and returned a minute later with a folded sheet of notebook paper. Henry took it with both hands, the way someone holds something fragile. He opened it. The handwriting was uneven but careful. Mr. Henry's hands. They shake when he thinks no one's watching, like maybe the world got too loud inside. But when he holds a crayon or pours sweet tea, they forget to tremble. He doesn't know all the answers. Sometimes he doesn't even ask the right questions. But he stays. And staying is the bravest thing I've seen all year. Henry's throat tightened. She wrote that? He asked. Caleb nodded. Yeah. Yesterday, after you fixed the door. Henry folded the paper slowly and held it to his chest. The sky opened up then, a soft rain falling in steady rhythm across the porch roof, and for the first time in a long time, Henry didn't feel like running from the weather. He let it fall, let it wash something old away. He stayed. The morning of the CPS home visit arrived wrapped in a hush. Celeste's house, usually filled with the hum of gospel records or Maya's chatter, felt heavy with anticipation. The couch had been vacuumed twice. The chipped picture frame of Maya's mother had been cleaned and centered on the mantel. Even the doormat had been replaced, an unexpected gift from Henry, with a note that simply said, "They'll see what we already know." Henry stood in the kitchen, straightening his collar in the reflection of the microwave. He wasn't nervous for himself. He was nervous for the things he couldn't control. The way inspectors looked at peeling paint like it was a sign of neglect instead of a sign of surviving. The way checkboxes never asked about love. Caleb walked in, holding a tray with a steaming kettle and 3 ceramic mugs. "She said they might like tea," he muttered. "Figured we don't have much else to offer." Henry smiled softly. "It's not about what we offer. It's about what they see. And what if they don't see what matters?" Henry didn't answer right away. Then we show them again, as many times as it takes." There was a knock at the door. Maya ran from her room, eyes wide, feet bare. "Is that them?" Celeste called from her chair. "Don't open it yet, baby. Let Mr. Calloway do it." Henry approached the door and opened it slowly. 2 women stood outside. One young, mid-20s, with tired eyes and a notepad already out. The other was older, maybe in her 50s, with a stern expression and a small camera bag over her shoulder. "Mr. Calloway?" the younger one asked. "Yes. And you are?" "Angela Mercer. This is my supervisor. Miss Rowe, we're here to conduct the home evaluation for Maya Green." He stepped aside, gesturing them in. "Thank you for coming." They entered like they were walking into an exhibit, eyes sweeping over every detail. Mercer wrote quickly as Miss Rowe scanned the living room. Celeste stood as they entered. "Miss Green," Rowe said, nodding. "Ma'am," Celeste replied. "Would you like some tea?" Mercer shook her head. "We won't take long." Rowe didn't answer. She moved through the living room, pausing at the family photos. The worn bookshelf, the neatness that didn't hide the age of the space. Henry watched as Rowe knelt near the heater vent. "This is old," she said. Celeste nodded. "We've had it serviced every winter. But it's not central air," Rowe noted. "No, ma'am." Mercer scribbled something. Henry stepped forward. "We're in the process of installing an updated unit. I've already contracted a team." Rowe looked at him. "And you are again?" "Henry Calloway, temporary co-guardian." She tilted her head. "And your relationship to Maya?" He hesitated. "Friend of the family, and someone who owes her more than I can explain." Mercer looked up. "That's not a legal term, Mr. Calloway." "I'm aware." Rowe stood and motioned toward the hallway. "May we see the sleeping arrangements?" Maya appeared again, tugging Henry's sleeve. "Can I show them my room?" Henry looked to Celeste. She gave a small nod. "Go ahead, baby." Maya led the way, bare feet padding down the hallway. The bedroom was small but warm. A handmade quilt on the bed, stuffed animals lined up by height, and a drawing of the magic bus taped proudly to the wall. Rowe scanned the space, then raised an eyebrow at the twin mattress on the floor in the corner. Maya smiled. "That's where Mr. Henry stays sometimes, when I have bad dreams." Mercer scribbled again. Henry stepped in. "We're setting up a second bedroom in my home, just in case Maya transitions there part-time. This is temporary." Rowe nodded slightly, then turned toward Maya. "What do you like most about living here?" Maya thought for a moment. "Grandma smells like peppermint, and the porch sings when it rains." Rowe looked confused. "The porch sings?" Maya nodded. "When it rains real light, the roof taps like a song. I listen to it when I can't sleep." Mercer paused. pen still. Her expression softened for the first time. Back in the living room, the women took final notes, while Celeste sipped tea slowly, watching them like a hawk. Mercer finally closed her folder. "We'll compile the report. It will be reviewed by the department. You'll be notified within 2 weeks." Rowe looked at Henry. "You'll need to submit official documentation proving legal responsibility. Until then, your presence here is considered voluntary support, not parental." "I understand," Henry said, "and I won't stop showing up." Rowe gave a short nod. They left without fanfare, the door clicking shut like a final punctuation. Celeste let out a long breath. They always walk in like they know the ending. Henry rubbed his temples. "I don't think they hated it." "No," she said. "But they didn't see it either." Caleb leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You think they'll split her from us?" "No," Henry said. "Because if they try, I'll be the loudest man in that courtroom." Just then, Maya reappeared, holding something behind her back. "I made a backup plan," she said, eyes bright. "What kind of plan?" Celeste asked. She pulled out a drawing, a picture of the house with a large sign in front that said, "Keep Imi here, please," in colorful letters. "I'll give it to the judge if they forget." Celeste choked on a laugh and pulled her close. "Lord, this child." Henry took the picture and smiled. "Maya, this might be your best work." Maya looked proud. "If they don't see love, maybe they'll see color." Outside, the clouds were beginning to gather again. Inside, the air felt like hope, tentative, flickering, but real. They had nothing but truth, a girl with crayons, and each other. And sometimes, that was exactly enough. A week passed, then another. The CPS report still hadn't come back. Celeste tried to pretend she wasn't waiting. She baked cornbread twice in one day, cleaned the windowsills no one looked at, and told Maya bedtime stories longer than her breath could carry. But every time the phone rang or the mail hit the porch, her body stiffened. Henry noticed. Every day. He noticed it in the way she started asking questions she didn't used to ask. "Did the school say anything odd when you dropped her off?" "Did the attorney call back? Do you think, if I go to the next appointment alone, they'll say I can't take care of her?" He answered gently. He reminded her of the judge's words, the temporary co-guardianship, the home visit that went better than any of them expected. But Celeste knew what he didn't. Sometimes systems change their mind. Sometimes they don't need a reason. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the second crack formed. Not with CPS, but with Caleb. Henry was sitting on the front steps, watching the mailman turn the corner. Maya was out back with chalk, drawing a welcome mat made of stars and swirls. Caleb pulled up to the curb in his old silver Honda. He didn't get out right away. When he did, Henry stood up, hopeful. "You got a second?" Caleb asked, eyes scanning the porch like it was a courtroom. "Of course." They sat, an arm's length apart, but closer than they'd been since the night Maya called. "I got an offer," Caleb said, breaking the silence. "Out in Atlanta, a mentoring program. They want me to lead a youth design collective." Henry's heart stuttered. "That's incredible." Caleb nodded. "It is." Henry knew what was coming. He could feel it. Caleb kept going. "But I'd have to move." "In 6 weeks." Henry looked down at the porch wood, the cracks between the boards that Maya filled with tiny pink chalk hearts just yesterday. "And Maya, that's what I came to talk about." Henry turned to him, cautious. Caleb looked tired, but clear. "She loves me. I know that, but she leans on you." Henry didn't speak. "I'm not giving up," Caleb added quickly. "I'm just admitting something. You stepped in when I couldn't, and she trusts you now. I don't want to take your place." "You're not," Caleb said. "You're making space. There's a difference." Henry's voice came soft. Do you want me to stop? Caleb laughed once, bitter and small. I think for a while, I did. I wanted to hate you for all the years you weren't there for me. For the times you chose boardrooms over birthdays. But Maya, she's proof that second chances exist. Henry swallowed hard. She's not a bandage, Caleb said. She's not here to fix what we broke. But I see how you look at her. Like she matters more than the empire you built. That's something. Henry nodded slowly. I'll do right by her. I promise. I know, Caleb said. That's why I'm telling you first. They sat in silence. Then Caleb stood. Tell Celeste. I'll talk to Maya myself. As he walked away, Henry felt something shift in his chest. Not grief, not guilt, but the tender pain of growing into someone new. That night, after dinner, Henry told Celeste everything. She didn't say much. She just folded her napkin in her lap and stared at her hands. You think he's leaving because of me? She asked, voice low. No, Henry said. He's leaving because someone finally sees what he's worth. She nodded. I don't want Maya to think he left her. She won't, Henry said. He'll tell her the truth. Celeste looked up at him, her eyes glassy. Make sure she never doubts it. I will. 2 days later, a letter came. Official CPS seal on the envelope. Henry found it first, in the mailbox, wrapped in a grocery store flyer. He brought it inside without a word and laid it on the table. Celeste came in from the back, her steps slower than usual. What's that? Henry didn't answer. He just slid it toward her. She stared at it, then back at him. Will you read it? His hands trembled slightly as he broke the seal. He read aloud. Following the home evaluation and court filings, the Department of Child Services has concluded that Maya Green is currently in a safe and nurturing environment. Due to the demonstrable presence of consistent adult support and efforts toward legal guardianship, the child shall remain in the care of Celeste Green and Henry Calloway under existing temporary co-guardianship. A formal hearing to discuss permanent placement is scheduled in 60 days. Celeste closed her eyes. Henry waited. Then she reached for his hand. That child deserves stability, she whispered. Let's give it to her. Later that night, Maya crawled into the armchair beside Henry, her notebook in hand. I wrote another poem, she said. Can I hear it? She nodded and began to read. The middle. People talk about beginnings, and they cry at the ends, but I think the middle's where hearts are tested, where the porch creaks, and the mail is late, and someone still shows up with lemonade. The middle is hard, but the middle is love, 'cause that's where people decide to stay. Henry smiled, blinking fast. You wrote that? Maya grinned. I did. He pulled her close. Then I guess I'm right where I belong. 3 weeks before the final court hearing, the story broke. It started with a blurry photo Henry walking Maya to school, her tiny hand in his, her pink backpack slung low. It appeared on a local blog with the headline, Tech Tycoon Turned Guardian Angel. By midday, it was trending. By sunset, it was a wildfire. They called him the reluctant millionaire. The man who traded Wall Street for front porch wisdom. A billionaire with a bedtime story. Half the headlines were syrupy, the other half suspicious. Everyone had an opinion, but no one seemed to ask the only person who mattered, Maya. Henry stood in his office, what used to be his office, a glass-walled annex in the back of the old carriage house he converted last year. The room buzzed with tension. A laptop open, notifications pouring in, emails, interview requests, unsolicited praise, thinly veiled threats. Celeste stood at the doorway, arms crossed. I told you, she said softly. When people can't control the truth, they sell their version of it. Henry turned. I never wanted this to be public. I know. I didn't even give a statement. That photo, someone must have followed us. It don't take much, she said. One picture, one whisper, And people start writing stories with your face on them. He sat, rubbing his forehead. What if this hurts the case? What if the judge sees it and thinks I'm using Maya to fix my image? Celeste walked in slowly, placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Then we tell the truth, and we keep telling it. He looked up at her. You think that's enough? It has to be. That night, the comments poured in faster than Henry could scroll. Some were kind, most weren't. Words like opportunist, PR stunt, damage control. One commenter even suggested he'd bought the guardianship. Henry closed the laptop. In the living room, Maya was curled on the couch beside Caleb, watching The Princess and the Frog for the 5th time that month. Her head rested on a pillow that still carried the scent of Celeste's lavender spray. Henry sank onto the other couch, eyes hollow. Caleb paused the movie. You okay? He asked. No, Henry said. But I'm here. Caleb studied him. You know, most kids don't remember who their father was until they're adults. Henry didn't respond. I remember who you weren't for a long time. But Maya, she only knows who you are right now. That's her truth. And if it's strong enough, it'll outlast all of theirs. Henry nodded slowly. Later, once the house quieted, he found Maya sitting on the porch with her notebook again, her knees pulled to her chest, crayon tucked behind one ear. Couldn't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. People at school were whispering. Henry sat beside her. What did they say? She shrugged. That you're famous, that I'm lucky. He looked at her carefully. Do you think that's true? Maya took a long breath. I think they don't know you like I do. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. What do you know about me? She turned toward him, her eyes honest. I know you try real hard. I know you're scared sometimes. I know you listen when I talk, even when it's silly. And you always ask me if I want ice cream, even if you already bought some. Henry chuckled quietly. You caught that, huh? She nodded, then leaned her head against his arm. I don't care what they say, she whispered. You're my Mr. Henry. The next morning, Henry sat with Elise Parr, the journalist who'd first reached out weeks ago. Against every instinct, he'd called her. They met at a quiet cafe off King Street. Henry wore a plain button-down, sleeves rolled, no tie, no suit. Just the man underneath. I'm not here for a feature, he said. I'm here because I want to set the record straight. Elise pulled out a recorder. Everything off the record unless you say otherwise. Fine, off the record. I'm not trying to fix a brand. I'm trying to fix a life. She raised an eyebrow. Yours? Maya's, and maybe mine in the process. He leaned forward. I made money. I lost family. I built a company and missed my son's childhood. Now I get a second chance. I'm not perfect, but I'm showing up. Elise tapped her pen. Why now? Henry paused. Because one night I got a call. A stranger told me my son was unconscious on the street, and when I got there, a little girl was holding his hand like it was the most normal thing in the world. That kind of love, it doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just shows up. And if you're lucky, you learn to show up too. Elise looked at him, surprised. Moved. Maybe. Would you like that to be on the record? He nodded. All of it. Back at the house, Celeste sat at the kitchen table, flipping through mail. Caleb was packing his things, carefully folding shirts, taping boxes with quiet hands. Maya sat on the floor nearby, coloring a picture of a sun with extra long rays. Where's the sun going? Celeste asked. Maya looked up. Nowhere. But it's reaching. Celeste smiled. Just like you. Later that evening, Henry read the draft Elise sent. It wasn't clickbait. It wasn't glossy. It was human. The headline read, Love isn't a headline. How one man chose to stay. Henry closed the laptop gently. In the distance, thunder rolled, a low reminder that storms always come. But this time, he wasn't bracing for it. He was ready to stay through the rain. The courtroom smelled like old wood and older paper. Ceiling fans turned lazily overhead, stirring the silence like it was something sacred. Outside, Savannah's sky threatened rain, heavy with clouds that refused to break. Inside, everyone waited. Henry adjusted his tie twice and tried to keep his breathing steady. Caleb sat behind him, back straight, suit pressed, but his fingers tapped an anxious rhythm on his thigh. Celeste, wearing her Sunday church hat and lavender scarf, gripped Maya's hand so gently it looked like a prayer. Maya swung her legs under the bench, wearing the dress she called her court sparkle, pink with a ribbon sewn by Mrs. Thompson. She whispered, "Do you think the judge is nice?" Celeste smiled, soft and sure. "She'll see what God already knows." Henry tried to believe that. Their attorney, Grace Mendez, stood by the bench, calm as still water. She glanced back at Henry, gave a tiny nod. The bailiff called, "Case number 4973, regarding the guardianship of Maya Green." Everyone rose. Judge Camille Hart entered, glasses low on her nose, hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked like someone who'd seen too many stories and trusted none of them until the end. She opened a file and said, "Let's begin." Grace stepped forward. "Your Honor, we're requesting that the court move from temporary co-guardianship to a permanent shared guardianship between Miss Celeste Green and Mr. Henry Calloway." Judge Hart looked over her glasses. "And what's changed since the last hearing?" Grace didn't miss a beat. The child's physical and emotional well-being have improved. Educational stability has been maintained. Home inspections were passed. There's documented support, not just financial, but deeply personal. We also submit letters of recommendation from the school counselor, Maya's pediatrician, and Pastor Ellis. Hart flipped through the file without expression. "Mr. Calloway," she said, suddenly sharp. "You've been the subject of recent media attention. Care to explain?" Henry stood, heart pounding. "Yes, Your Honor." She waited. "I didn't seek publicity. Someone took a photo of me walking Maya to school. The story grew without my permission. But I gave an interview not to defend myself, but to defend her. Because this little girl, she's not a project or a brand reboot. She's a person who changed my life the moment she called me." He paused, let his voice settle. "I failed my own son. For years. I built a business and lost the boy who needed me most. But Maya, she gave me a second chance to be present, and I'm not walking away from that." Hart stared at him. "Do you think love makes someone qualified to parent?" "No, ma'am," he said. "But it's a start, and I'm learning the rest every single day." Hart closed the file. "Bring the child forward." Maya stood slowly, walking up with small, determined steps. Grace gave her a reassuring pat as she passed. Judge Hart leaned forward. "Miss Maya, can I ask you something?" Maya nodded. "Do you feel safe where you live?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you feel loved?" Maya smiled. "All the time." "And what would happen if the court chose someone else for you to live with?" Maya's eyes dimmed. She looked at Henry, then Celeste. "Then I'd write a really long letter to the sky," she said softly, "and ask my mama why they didn't listen." The room went still. Celeste covered her mouth. Henry's eyes burned. Judge Hart blinked once, slowly, then cleared her throat. "Thank you, sweetheart. You may sit down." Maya returned, squeezing Henry's hand like it was the only thing keeping her from floating away. Grace stepped forward again. "Your Honor, the law values consistency and the best interest of the child. We believe this arrangement, Miss Green and Mr. Calloway as co-guardians offers both." Hart didn't speak for a full minute. She scanned the file again, then looked up. "Family is a strange thing," she said. We act like it's blood and paperwork, but more often, it's choice, effort, staying power. She took off her glasses. Petition for permanent co-guardianship is approved. Celeste gasped. Henry let out a breath that had been caged in his chest for weeks. Caleb covered his mouth and nodded, fighting emotion he didn't expect. Maya whispered, "What does that mean?" Henry knelt beside her. "It means you're home, baby. For good." Outside the courthouse, thunder finally broke. Rain came steady and warm, like the sky had been holding it in until the right moment. They stood under the awning, laughing as the storm painted the sidewalk dark. Maya twirled in the rain, arms wide, her court-sparkle dress sticking to her knees. Henry looked at Celeste. "You okay?" She smiled, proud and tired. "I've been waiting for this piece a long time." Caleb joined them, his umbrella forgotten. "So, can we get ice cream now?" Maya cheered. "Yes, with sprinkles and chocolate syrup." Henry laughed. "Your wish is my command." And as they walked down the courthouse steps, one hand holding an umbrella, one hand holding a little girl's heart, the world didn't just feel better, it felt right. The cafe on the corner of Whitaker and Jones had become their little ritual spot. Henry, Celeste, and Maya. One Saturday each month, they'd walk in without needing a menu. The waitress already knew. Celeste liked her coffee with honey. Henry took his black, and Maya ordered hot cocoa with extra marshmallows and a swirl of whipped cream taller than her face. But this morning, something in the air was different. Not wrong, just heavy. Henry sat by the window, stirring his coffee, though he hadn't added a thing. Celeste folded her napkin slowly, her fingers unusually fidgety, and Maya, sensing the shift, didn't speak until her marshmallows had fully melted. "I heard Miss Collins say something weird yesterday," she said softly, glancing up. Henry looked at her, gently. "What did she say?" "She told another teacher that sometimes adults save kids to make themselves feel better." Silence settled across the table. Celeste's eyes narrowed. Not in anger, more like quiet concern. Henry pressed his lips together, then leaned in slightly. "What do you think that means, sweetheart?" Maya tilted her head, thoughtful in that way she often was. "I think maybe Miss Collins doesn't know what it feels like to be the kid." Celeste let out the breath she'd been holding. Henry reached across the table and took Maya's small hand in his. "I didn't help you to feel better. I helped you because you matter. Even if no one ever saw it before. I did. I do." Maya smiled a little, but there was a flicker of something else in her expression, uncertainty, maybe. Doubt that clung to her like a shadow on sunny days. After breakfast, Celeste walked home ahead to start the laundry, leaving Henry and Maya to take the long way back through Forsyth Park. They passed the fountain, then the playground, and finally, Maya paused at the row of benches beneath the tall oaks. "Can we sit for a minute?" she asked. "Of course." They sat quietly, watching a group of children play tag, their laughter spilling into the soft spring air. Maya glanced at Henry. "Do you ever miss who you used to be?" He turned to her, surprised. "Why do you ask?" She shrugged. "Sometimes I wonder if you ever wish you could go back to your old life, when it was just you and money and meetings and no little girls drawing on your porch steps." Henry chuckled, then shook his head. "You'd be surprised how empty all that felt without someone putting sidewalk chalk in the cracks." She smiled, but again, it didn't fully reach her eyes. "Why?" he asked gently. Maya picked at the edge of the bench. "Sometimes I feel like I took something. Like your old life had this shape, and I broke it when I fell into it." Henry didn't speak right away. Then he leaned forward, elbows on knees, voice low and steady. "You didn't break anything. You made it make sense. I used to think success was about building something no one could tear down. But now, I think it's about being part of something you'd fight to keep." Maya looked up, her eyes wide. "I don't miss who I used to be," Henry added. Not even a little. She nodded slowly. Okay. That evening, back home, Celeste was folding warm towels in the living room when Henry came in, holding his phone, a hesitant look on his face. "Celeste," he said, "I need to show you something." He turned the screen to her. It was a new article, posted on a parenting blog, gaining traction online. But this wasn't a puff piece. It was laced with speculation, questioning the ethics of guardianship arrangements, like theirs, unmarried, non-traditional, complicated. "What are they saying?" she asked, keeping her tone even. "That I used Maya's story to reinvent myself. That the court should have considered blood relatives first. That I manipulated the system." Celeste stared at the phone, her face unreadable. Then she slowly walked over to the sideboard, pulled out a candle, and lit it with a match. "You know what Mama always told me," she said, as the flame steadied. Henry shook his head. "If you're doing something that makes a coward uncomfortable, you're probably doing something worth doing." Henry exhaled, like he'd been waiting to hear something exactly like that. Still, the comments grew louder online over the next few days. Even the school had started asking for updated documentation regarding Maya's guardianship status, citing policy clarity. Henry found himself pacing more often. Celeste fielded phone calls that ended with questions no one had asked before. Maya, sensing the noise, grew quieter. Then one evening, as Henry closed his laptop in frustration, Maya walked in with a piece of folded paper. "I wrote something," she said. He unfolded it carefully. "Home. They say houses have doors and roofs, but I think they have people. I think home is made of voices that don't stop calling you, even when you don't answer right away. I think it's made of hands that reach for you, not to pull you up, but to sit with you when you're low. I think home is what you build when you don't run away anymore." Henry looked up, his voice cracking. "Did you write this because of what you heard?" Maya nodded. "But I'm not scared. I just wanted to remind you." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tighter than he had in weeks. "I needed that," he whispered. "More than you know." Outside, the wind shifted. Not a storm, just the first breath of change. Inside, they stayed close, three hearts, holding fast in a world that still didn't know quite what to make of them. But they knew. And that would have to be enough. The invitation arrived, folded in a pale blue envelope, its edges hand-pressed and embossed with gold foil. At the center, in elegant script, it read, "Savannah Child Advocacy, Gala honoring local champions for youth." Henry stared at it for a long time, unsure if it was a thank you or a test. Celeste read it over his shoulder, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "They want you to speak?" Henry nodded. 2-minute remarks. Light, heartfelt, inspirational. Their words. Celeste raised a brow. "So they want the fairy tale version. I'm not interested in giving them a bedtime story." She tilted her head, measuring him. "Then don't. Give them the truth." He looked over at Maya, playing on the porch with chalk again, her favorite habit, filling the concrete with sunbeams, hearts, and stars. "Do you think it matters?" he asked. "Telling it?" Celeste turned toward the window, watching the girl who changed everything. "If one person in that room is holding power they don't understand, yeah, it matters." The night of the gala arrived like a storm dressed in silk. The ballroom glowed with chandeliers and white tablecloths, filled with polished smiles and soft jazz humming in the background. Henry stood near the edge of the stage, adjusting his collar. He hadn't worn a tux-in over 3 years. He caught his reflection in the glass of a nearby framed portrait. His own face, tired, but steadier now, wiser. Caleb approached, gently straightening his tie. "You look nervous." "I am. Want me to tell you something comforting?" "Please. You can't mess this up more than you already have." Henry barked a laugh and shook his head. "I mean that lovingly," Caleb added with a grin. "You've already been humbled. Just speak from there." At their table, Maya sat with Celeste, sipping lemonade from a champagne flute and swinging her legs under the chair. She wore a soft yellow dress and a sunflower pin in her hair. She looked like hope had bloomed on purpose. When Henry's name was called, the applause was polite but curious. People leaned in, unsure what to expect. A tech mogul? A man who vanished from the spotlight, only to return as a single father of someone else's child? Henry stepped up to the microphone. He didn't smile right away. He let the silence breathe, let it settle over the room like fog rolling in off the river. Then, he began. I used to measure success by how many people answered my emails, how fast my numbers grew, how many zeros followed the one in my account. He paused, looking out. Then, one night, my phone rang. A stranger told me my son had collapsed on the street. And when I arrived, it wasn't just him I found. It was a little girl with a broken shoe and a heart twice the size of mine. Murmurs rippled through the room. She held his hand like they'd known each other forever. And when she looked up at me, she didn't ask who I was. She just said, "He's safe now," like that was the only thing that mattered. He glanced toward the table, locking eyes with Maya. She gave him a quiet thumbs up. I didn't rescue Maya. She rescued all of us. She showed me that family isn't what you're born into, it's who stays when everything else falls apart. And loving a child, it's not a performance. It's not a press release. It's a choice, every single day. The room stilled. I know there are people who think I did this for redemption, or legacy, or image. But let me be clear. I did this because a girl needed someone, and for the first time in my life, I stopped waiting to be ready and started showing up. He stepped back from the mic. Quiet. Then applause. Not thunderous, but honest. As he walked off stage, several attendees nodded to him. Some touched his arm gently. One woman, eyes rimmed with tears, whispered, "Thank you for saying what needed saying." Back at the table, Maya stood on her chair and wrapped her arms around his waist. "You didn't mess up," she said proudly. "No?" he asked, laughing softly. "No, you were brave." Celeste smiled from her seat, sipping her coffee. About time someone said it. On the way home, the car was quiet. Savannah's streets glistened from a brief shower earlier, streetlights glowing like amber in puddles. Maya, drowsy in the back seat, mumbled, "What happens next?" Henry glanced in the rearview mirror. "What do you mean?" "Now that people know everything, do we go back to normal?" He thought for a moment, eyes on the road. "I don't think we go back," he said softly. "I think we go forward, together." She nodded and closed her eyes, and in that moment, with the city humming quietly around them, Henry realized something. He wasn't carrying the weight of what he'd lost anymore. He was holding on to what he'd found. The next morning, sunlight broke through the curtains in streaks of gold. Henry stood at the stove, still in his pajama pants, flipping blueberry pancakes, Maya's request. The house was unusually quiet, except for the soft sizzle of batter hitting the pan and the faint chirp of birds outside the kitchen window. Celeste sat at the table with her reading glasses low on her nose, sorting through a stack of mail. Maya, still sleepy-eyed and barefoot, padded into the kitchen holding her cracked phone case in her hands. "Found it under my bed," she said, holding it up like a relic. Henry looked over and smiled. "I thought you threw that old thing out." "I couldn't," she said, cradling it. "It's part of everything." He placed a pancake on her plate. "Then we'll keep it." She beamed. The phone case, worn and slightly chipped, had become something unspoken between them. A piece of the night, everything changed. A reminder of where love began, not with a perfect plan, but a messy, midnight call. As they ate, Caleb knocked on the screen door and walked in, holding 2 coffees and a folder tucked under one arm. He looked hesitant. "Morning," he said, glancing around the table. "Morning, son," Celeste replied, her tone warm but knowing. Henry looked up. "Everything okay?" Caleb set the coffees down and handed the folder to Henry. I got a letter last night. From my mom. Henry blinked. Your mom? Caleb nodded. She heard about Maya. About the court case. She saw the gala speech. Said it made her curious. Henry opened the folder. Inside was a handwritten letter on cream-colored paper, neat and deliberate. She wants to meet. Caleb added. Wants to talk. Said she's proud of me. Celeste let out a soft hum. Well now, life comes around, doesn't it? Henry read the letter twice, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at his son. You going? Caleb hesitated, then shrugged. I think so. But I wanted you to know. Because I've spent a long time being angry at you for what you weren't. Henry's face tightened. But lately, Caleb continued, I've been watching you become something different, not perfect. Just present. That means something. It landed heavier than Henry expected. I was always scared I couldn't change, he said quietly, that I'd always be the guy who left too much unsaid. Caleb folded his arms. Then maybe it's time to say what matters. The room went still. Maya stopped mid-bite. Henry reached for his coffee and took a long sip, collecting himself. I'm proud of you, he said, voice low but sure. You've become a man with depth, with grace. I didn't teach you that, but I see it. And I'm sorry for all the times I didn't show up. Caleb looked away, blinking fast, then nodded. Thanks, Dad. It wasn't everything, but it was enough for now. Later that afternoon, Maya and Henry walked the length of River Street, taking in the sunlight, bouncing off the water. Street musicians played soft jazz on corners, and tourists wandered between shops with pralines in hand. Maya stopped at a small art vendor and picked up a hand-painted postcard. It showed the Savannah skyline at sunset, deep orange and indigo melting together. Can I get this? She asked. Sure. Want to send it to someone? She shook her head. I want to frame it, for my room. Henry paid the artist, who smiled and said, She's got an eye. That one's my favorite. As they walked back, Maya spoke softly. Do you think people can really start over? Henry considered it. Not from scratch, he said, but maybe from the truth. That's better anyway. She nodded slowly, turning the card over in her hands like a secret. When they returned home, Celeste was sitting on the porch swing, humming to herself and shelling peas. The house smelled like lavender and lemon, her cleaning day ritual. You two have a good walk? She asked. Maya held up her postcard. Found something beautiful. Celeste smiled wide. Just like you. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in the same shades as Maya's card, Henry sat alone in his office. The cracked phone case was now in a small shadow box on the shelf, next to a photo of him and Caleb from when Caleb was 6. He opened his laptop, paused, then began writing a blog post. Not a viral one. Not a redemption story. Just the truth. They say the past defines you. But I've learned something else. Sometimes, it prepares you. For the moment a child reaches out in the dark, and you decide this time you'll be there to catch them. He hit save, then closed the laptop. Outside, laughter echoed from the porch. Inside, peace was no longer a stranger. Spring in Savannah had a way of making everything feel like a second chance. The jasmine bloomed along the fences, and the warm breeze carried music from porches and laughter from open windows. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind that held no obligations except to be lived fully. Henry stood on the front lawn in his rolled-up sleeves, helping Maya plant sunflowers. The soil was soft, the air smelled of earth and honeysuckle, and Maya's hands were already stained with dirt. Deep enough? She asked, peering into the hole she'd dug. Perfect, he said, handing her a seed. They worked in silence for a few minutes, the kind of silence that felt earned, comfortable. After the last seed was tucked beneath the soil, Maya stood and brushed off her jeans. I think they'll like it here, she said, surveying the little row. I think they already do. From the porch, Celeste called out, "Y'all better wash up before the food gets cold." Henry looked up and smiled. "Yes, ma'am." They climbed the steps, and as Henry opened the screen door, he felt something shift in his chest. Not something breaking this time, but something falling into place. The table was already set: fried catfish, collard greens, sweet tea so cold the glasses sweated. Celeste moved with grace in her kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, her face glowing the way it did when everything she loved was under one roof. Caleb arrived just as they sat down, holding a brown envelope in one hand. "Sorry I'm late," he said, kissing Celeste's cheek. "Had to grab this on the way." He handed the envelope to Henry, who raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Caleb sat, his voice casual but warm. "Final court papers. Maya's permanent guardianship. You don't need to prove anything anymore. It's done." Henry paused, then slowly peeled the flap open. Inside was a single sheet with the state seal stamped in gold. It felt heavier than paper should. He looked at Maya. Her eyes searched his face. "You're ours," he said quietly, holding her gaze. "Officially." Maya blinked once, then twice. Then her face broke into a grin so bright it felt like the room expanded with it. Celeste wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. About time they caught up to what we already knew. After dinner, as twilight settled in, Maya ran upstairs and returned with something clutched behind her back. She walked up to Henry, shy all of a sudden. "I made you something," she said. He looked down. "Yeah?" She handed him a framed poem, handwritten in her neatest script. At the top, in bold letters, it said, "Where I was found, I was not lost. Just waiting. Waiting for a porch light that stayed on past midnight. For hands that didn't let go too fast. For voices that remembered my name in the morning. You didn't find me in the street. You found me when you stayed. And now I know. Home is not a place you reach. It's the people who reach for you." Henry didn't speak. His voice had gone somewhere he couldn't find. He knelt and pulled her into his arms. She didn't resist, just wrapped around him like she'd always belonged there. Later that night, the three of them sat on the porch. Celeste rocked gently in her chair. Henry sipped coffee, even though it was too late. Maya curled up between them with a blanket and the sound of crickets in the background. "I've been thinking," Henry said after a long pause. "Dangerous," Celeste teased. He chuckled. "Maybe. But I've been thinking about all the things I used to chase. Accolades, success, headlines. I thought those were the proof of a life well lived. And now?" she asked. He looked at Maya, then at Celeste. "Now I think a life well lived is quiet moments. Forgiveness, the sound of someone laughing in your kitchen." Celeste nodded, satisfied. "Took you long enough." Maya stirred. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course," Henry said. "I don't remember everything from the night I met you, just bits and pieces. But I remember your hand. It was warm. I remember thinking, maybe I wasn't invisible." Henry swallowed hard. "You never were. Not to me." The stars were just starting to show, faint and flickering above the trees. Maya rested her head against Henry's side. "Promise me something?" "Anything. Don't stop showing up. Even when I get older. Even when I mess up." Henry reached for her hand. "I promise. You'll never have to earn this." Celeste closed her eyes and whispered, "Amen." The porch light flickered, then steadied. Somewhere inside, the dishwasher hummed and the clock ticked, and the world continued on. But in that house on the corner of Whitaker and Jones, something holy had been built not from perfection, but persistence. A mosaic of broken beginnings, mended not with grand gestures, but with presence, with staying, with love. And sometimes, in the quiet, you could hear it, the echo of that midnight call. Only now, the voice on the other end wasn't afraid. It had found home.